Donald Trump kicks off his visit to Beijing with a tour of the Forbidden City and a Peking opera performance.
Do not underestimate us, and do not try us.
Another stern warning for North Korea from Trump before he leaves South Korea. And some 200,000 customers' personal details may be at risk after a hack attack on a local travel agency's database. Good evening. The standoff over North Korea's nuclear weapons program and demands that China do more to balance trade with America will continue to dominate President Donald Trump's agenda in Beijing this week. The U.S. leader touched down in the capital this afternoon. He was given a grand and cordial welcome by his hosts. Tony Sabine begins our coverage.
In imperial times, when delegations arrived from foreign lands, they were taken to the Forbidden City to pay tribute to the emperor. Now, in the 21st century, US President Donald Trump retraced the steps of those before him today. America's leader and wife met with President Xi Jinping and his spouse at the symbolic heart of Chinese state power. They were treated to a tour of the Palace Museum and a Peking opera performance. Earlier in the afternoon, Trump and his wife Melania were given a lavish red carpet welcome at the airport, complete with a band playing martial music and children waving mini Chinese and American flags. This is perhaps the most significant part of Trump's Asia tour. Hours before arriving in Beijing today, Trump used an address to the National Assembly in South Korea to deliver a stern message to China, North Korea's biggest trade partner, that it must do more to rein in Pyongyang's nuclear ambitions. And Trump is expected to push Beijing on this point during his state visit, as well as addressing the trade deficit between the two countries.
The president really appreciates the collaboration and support that he has received from China in addressing the threat from North Korea. We are enforcing those sanctions, but I think we need to do even more. Also, the trade is a very important area. We've seen great growth in trade between our two countries, but there's some concerns about having more reciprocity and reducing the balance of payments deficit between the United States and China.
Other important issues likely to be discussed include Beijing's territorial claims in the South China Sea, demands for greater access to the Chinese market, and China's draconian internet controls. White House aides view Trump's visit to China as the centerpiece of his 12-day tour to the region. Both sides have played up the personal connection the two leaders apparently have. But Trump will encounter a newly emboldened President Xi, who recently consolidated power at the 19th Communist Party Congress. Tony Sabine, TVB News.
Earlier today, the US president closed out a two-day visit to South Korea with another sharp warning for Pyongyang. As James Aiken reports, this came as Trump addressed the National Assembly in Seoul.
Hours after an aborted visit to the Korean demilitarized zone because of bad weather, Trump used his address to lawmakers to caution North Korean leader Kim Jong-un against interpreting U.S. restraint as weakness.
This is a very different administration than the United States has had in the past. Today, I hope I speak not only for our countries, but for all civilized nations when I say to the North, do not underestimate us and do not try us.
In some of his toughest language yet, Trump used terms like slaves and atrocities to paint a dystopian picture of North Korea.
The weapons you are acquiring are not making you safer. They are putting your regime in grave danger. Every step you take down this dark path increases the peril you face. North Korea is not the paradise your grandfather envisioned. It is a hell that no person deserves.
Trump did offer a path to a much better future if Pyongyang stops its weapons programs and agrees to a complete and verifiable denuclearization. He said the world cannot tolerate the menace of a rogue regime, and he called on every nation, including China and Russia, to deny North Korea support, supply, or acceptance. Trump had hoped to underscore his message with an early morning visit to the DMZ. But heavy fog forced the Marine One helicopter to turn back just 5 minutes from landing at the heavily fortified border that separates the North and South. White House Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders said Trump was pretty frustrated he couldn't make the trip. It was believed the White House had previously ruled out a DMZ visit for Trump, claiming the president didn't have time on his schedule. But Sanders said the visit had been kept secret for security reasons. James Aiken, TVB News.
Over to the governor's races in America, where Democrats swept to victory, sending a clear message of rebuke to President Trump. In Virginia, Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam defeated Republican Ed Gillespie. In New Jersey, Phil Murphy trounced a Republican contender to replace outgoing Governor Chris Christie. Plus, the Democratic mayors of New York and Boston also won re-election. The wins are boosting morale for Democrats who until now had failed to channel anti-Trump energy into success. Turning to the Texas church shooting that left 26 people dead on Sunday, investigators say the gunman escaped from a mental hospital in 2012 and threatened to kill others. The mass shooting has renewed calls for stricter gun control. Sonia Otero reports.
Just months after beating his first wife and stepson, Devin Kelly escaped from a mental hospital in 2012. An employee there warned police Kelly was a danger to himself and others. That's because Kelly was caught sneaking firearms onto a military base where he was plotting death threats against his superior officers. That triggered a military probe, which found Kelly was ordering guns and tactical gear online. But the shooter wouldn't have been able to buy guns had it not for the U.S. military's failure to report his domestic violence conviction. Defense Secretary James Mattis ordered an investigation into what went wrong. Investigators now know Kelly targeted the tiny church because his ex-wife's mother attended services there.
Everybody started screaming, yelling. Everybody got down, crawling under, wherever they could hide. It was so scary, and that man was shooting. He was shooting hard.
Kelly reportedly sent his mother-in-law threatening text messages.
We have the suspect's cell phone. We have executed a search warrant on that cell phone, and that cell phone has been turned over to the FBI.
The tragedy prompted another gun control debate on Capitol Hill, where Republicans admitted the system failed.
We intend to work with colleagues and the administration to come up with legislation that will both ensure the fact that the federal government and all the military branches comply with the law.
While visiting South Korea, President Donald Trump lauded one shooter for stopping the gunman.
I can only say this: if he didn't have a gun, instead of having 26 dead, he would have had hundreds more dead.
Gun rights activists agree.
When the United States government failed its job of protecting the people through the enforcement of the gun control laws, it turns out that the folks who saved lives in Texas were law-abiding citizens.
Sonia Artero, TVB News.
In local news now, there are fears tonight that some 200,000 customers of a local travel agency may have had their personal details compromised. The agency confirmed it was the victim of a hack attack in which hackers demanded a 7-digit figure worth of bitcoins. Sharon Tang has more.
A vow of apology from the executives of WWPKG Holdings this evening to the hundreds of thousands of customers whose personal details may have been accessed by hackers on Monday. The travel agency specializes in tours to Japan. It was forced to shut down its website yesterday following the computer hack. The agency said hackers had demanded more than $1 million worth of the digital currency, Bitcoin.
We are definitely sure that we are not going to encourage this kind of hacking actions.
Yun added that an estimated 200,000 clients may have had their personal details compromised. He stressed that some sensitive data, such as credit card information, was only kept in the computer system for a year.
But we are quite sure that the information containing all the regarding the credit card information is only around 1/10 of the total data.
The agency's Mongkok branch reopened today, but its business hours will be between noon and 6 p.m. for the time being, as staff members wait for the computer system to fully come online. So staff had to handle tour applications manually. Initial police investigations have found that the hackers, thought to be overseas, used the botnet virus to breach the travel agency's computer system. The hack was not associated with the WannaCry bug, which paralyzed computer systems in May and demanded the digital currency to unfreeze data. IT experts advised installing firewalls, encrypting databases, and performing security audits on networks and servers to prevent hack attacks.
Because the loss for the database, including your name, your address, your Hong Kong ID card, and also your email and lots of things, and the credit card number, etc. So I think in the other way, you can also try to change the email password so that in case there are the hacker, they try to associate using your email address to do something, the loss can be minimized.
In a statement issued yesterday, the travel agency said it had contacted police after discovering unauthorized access to its database, which contained clients' names, ID card details, passport numbers, credit card information, and addresses. The agency also pledged that booked tours would go ahead as planned. Sharon Tang, TVB News.
The police are warning against a rare type of drug that looks like tea leaves. In recent operations, officers seized more than a ton of the controlled substance with a street value of $6.4 million. You won't get your average cuppa from these green tea leaves. The packages are just a disguise for what's really inside. They contain chemicals controlled under the Dangerous Drugs Ordinance. Once you consume it, you could get hallucinations, become delusional, excited, or even suicidal. It's very easy to get hooked on the leaves, which will increase your blood pressure and heart rate, said Ng Wing Si of the Narcotics Bureau. In 3 of their operations since May, officers have seized more than a ton of cat leaves, nicknamed Arabic tea. They were mailed from East Africa to storage facilities in Hong Kong, a detour before they are ultimately sent to the United States, Canada and Norway. Officers described cat leaves as a rare drug in Hong Kong. They said there is no evidence to suggest it's becoming popular here. Still, they are keeping a close eye on the substance, as trafficking in dangerous drugs is an offence in Hong Kong that carries a maximum penalty of life imprisonment and a fine of $5 million. The judge presiding over Franklin Chu's case today decided there is a prima facie case against the retired superintendent. Chu took to the witness stand later in the afternoon to defend his case. Winner